Happy holidays, everybody, from everyone at Motorsport 101. And as Formula 1 drags itself into the roaring 20s, I thought it would be a good time to look back at how we got here from the last 10 years and have a word about what the sport could be like going forward. What did the last 10 years really bring us? Well, we had an incredibly strong start to the decade with two of the best seasons ever. 2010 had 5 men eligible to win it with 2 rounds to go. This past decade's 2003, as towards the end it seemed no one wanted to take it. Sebastian Vettel in the end controlling his own destiny in Abu Dhabi and becoming the sport's youngest ever champion. 2012 was one of the greatest seasons ever, with so much to appreciate. The rise of Sergio Perez and a Sauber that punched well above its weight. The shock and the carnage of Pastor Maldonado, from shocking the world to Spain to being calamitous in combat on numerous occasions. Fernando Alonso winning from 11th in home soil. Vettel taking Asia with 4 straight wins. The end of Lewis Hamilton's McLaren era, a love story turned sour with leaked data and the allure of a different shade of silver. Michael Schumacher's one last bit of magic. And in the end, we had the culmination of this decade's greatest rivalry as Fernando and Sebastian went to war to try and complete their trilogies, with the German making 2 outrageous comebacks at the death to survive. In hindsight, we probably got a little too wrapped up in Sebastian's reign of purple terror when it was instead replaced by the nightmare in silver that Merckx brought with the hybrid era. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg thrust back into the main event as they quickly became the only 2 men that could fight for the title. The 2 former best friends of 15 years suddenly became the only 2 men who could fight for the title, and their friendship went from thriving in Bahrain to toxic by Belgium as the stakes got raised. Hamilton won the battle in 2014 and 15, but Rosberg's resilience and dedication won him the war in 2016. The one title that got away as he rode into the sunset, irking the greatest driver of this era more than the 6 titles he's now amassed since, like Steve Davis when he lost to Dennis Taylor. We saw McLaren start the decade at the top, fall to the back of the field, only to catch their resurgence towards the end of it. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz Jr. providing genuine hope for the Woking boys after the worst patch in recent history. We saw the harsh reality of Red Bull sacrificing everything for their star talent, only to move on like a jilted boyfriend whenever the shiny ornament came around the corner. Many were sacrificed for Ricciardo, for Verstappen and more, but for a team no greater to replicate in their V8 success than they were 6 years ago when they dominated the end of the V8s. We as an audience still found ways to be wound up. We all bitched and moaned about going from those V8s to hybrid V6s, got mad about it for about 3 weeks, then shut up and got on with it. The same when the Halo came in, a device that has absolutely been vindicated in its effectiveness, when at the time we all moaned about how aesthetically pleasing it would look instead. Lewis Hamilton was absolutely driver of the decade, turning himself into a complete all-round menace of a racing driver. Blistering 1-lap pace, nearly immaculate racecraft, and maximising bad days to become one of the greatest drivers F1's ever seen. Sebastian Vettel may not have ended the decade as its greatest, but probably took the role away from Fernando as its greatest antagonist. From the villain in purple, ignoring team orders and dominance so overhyped we were labelling him a sport killer, to the hero in red, who for many a time the only man who could keep Mercedes honest. To now, the vulnerable former superstar in a team slowly drifting away from him. But that's just it. As this chapter ends, the future of the grid looks brighter than ever. 2019 was the first season where half the grid was 25 or less. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen took a lot of their headlines at the top of the order. But the next wave is fun, refreshing, and most importantly, talented as all hell. Don't be surprised if Lando Norris, George Russell and Alex Albon end up future stars. They're exactly the characters we as F1 fans so often beg for. And of course, it was a decade of heartbreaking loss. Just in F1 alone, we lost Jules Bianchi, a beloved future star who was on the brink of escaping that new team hell. Charlie Whiting, a rock at the top of the sport. Our Pierluigi Collina, that'll be nearly impossible to replace. And Niki Lauda, one of the sport's bravest and inspirational champions. And of course, Antoine Hubert, an outstanding talent on the brink of an F1 career himself, taken from us far too soon. As we look ahead, 2020 feels a lot like 2019 Part 2. even more so with a daunting regulation change just a year away. A promise to improve the spectacle, something we so often lost in the hybrid era. Budget caps to try and make the sport more competitive from an economic standpoint. A growing calendar to compete with NASCAR and other sports like the Premier League. From the outside in, I'm skeptical. F1 is a machine, and the three biggest teams are leaps and bounds ahead of the rest, and it's going to take a lot of cogs coming off their wheels to stop them from turning. But in a decade that's been epitomised by change, I look forward to seeing what the next decade brings. Happy New Year, happy new decade, and expect a lot more videos soon. Sayonara.